In a world where everything is urgent, where every moment seems to demand a reaction, there lies an often overlooked truth: real power comes not from how loudly we speak, but from how quietly we carry ourselves. The great paradox of presence is that it doesn't seek attention, yet commands it. It doesn't shout, yet it's heard. It doesn't chase approval, yet it draws others in with invisible gravity. Imagine a person who walks into a room, not seeking to impress, not performing for anyone's gaze, and yet the entire atmosphere changes. No words are spoken. No effort is made. And yet, something within everyone stirs. That is the kind of presence this world rarely understands, and even more rarely masters. You've likely met someone like this. Not someone loud or boastful, but someone who, without a single word, makes you question yourself, makes you want to rise, to be better, to show up more fully. And you don't even know why. It's not manipulation. It's not strategy. It's something else. Something sacred. What you feel is the quiet pressure of your own potential being reflected back to you. In that presence, the ego doesn't feel attacked, it feels stirred, awakened. Because deep down, we all know when we're not living up to our fullest selves. And when someone comes along who silently embodies alignment, the gap between who we are and who we could be becomes painfully visible. This is not charisma. It's not charm. It's not the carefully curated persona the world is used to rewarding. This is inner clarity. Stillness. A kind of magnetic truth that doesn't ask to be seen, yet makes others feel seen. And that's the deepest desire of the human ego, not to be praised, but to be understood. Not to be flattered, but to be mirrored. When someone sees you, not just your surface, not just your smile or your words, but sees your hesitations, your unspoken longings, your unfinished edges, something inside you shifts. It's uncomfortable, yes. But it's also unforgettable. And this is where influence begins, not by pushing, not by proving, but by being. The people who truly impact us often say very little. They don't lecture. They don't explain. They simply live their truth so fully that their presence becomes a silent invitation for others to rise. And what they awaken in others isn't admiration, it's discomfort. A sacred kind of discomfort. The kind that makes you reevaluate. The kind that makes you grow. Because something about their stillness holds up a mirror. And in that mirror, you see your own noise. We live in a world addicted to validation. Social media, applause, performance, constant feedback loops that tell us who we are. And yet, the rarest power is to walk away from all that, to live in a way that is self-referenced, grounded, whole. That's why presence feels like a storm in silence. Because it reminds us of something we've forgotten. We don't need to do more, say more, chase more. We need to return to the core of who we are, and from that place, everything aligns. This inner stability doesn't come from arrogance. It doesn't come from pretending to be unfazed. It comes from doing the hard, invisible work of becoming whole. Of sitting with your own doubts until they quiet. Of facing your own shadows until they lose their power. Of learning how to hear your own truth in the midst of the world's noise. And once you've done that, you no longer have to announce yourself. You just enter a room, and others feel it. Not because you said something impressive, but because you said nothing, and it still shifted the air. So how does this work? What is the mechanism? It's not magic. It's not mind games. It's ancient. It's simple. The Stoics called it logos, the inner reason, the quiet force of clarity that orders the soul. It's not about being unemotional, it's about being unmoved by what doesn't matter. It's about choosing your responses, not being ruled by reactions. The moment you stop seeking to control how others see you, and instead master how you see yourself, the energy you radiate begins to change. People notice. Not because you force them to. But because energy doesn't lie. And ego, other people's egos, are always scanning. Not for words, but for signals. Silent signals. Who do I need to impress? Who holds power here? Who sees me? And if your presence says, I don't need anything from you, but I see everything in you, something deep inside them shifts. Not from fear. Not from insecurity. But from reverence. They can't explain it. They just feel it. And this is why rejection hurts so deeply. It's not about the surface-level denial of a request or an invitation. It's the silent message, you're not seen. You're not enough to be chosen. The ego doesn't just want attention, it wants reflection. It wants to feel real in someone else's gaze. And when that doesn't happen, the wound isn't logical, it's spiritual. That's why flattery doesn't heal it. Praise without depth feels hollow. But presence? Presence changes things. Because when someone stands before you, completely anchored in themselves, and still chooses to see you, really see you, your ego doesn't feel defeated. It feels met. It feels remembered. That's why some people never leave your mind. They didn't dazzle you. They didn't perform. They didn't even try. But something in their stillness shook something loose in you. Maybe it made you uncomfortable. Maybe it made you quiet. But it made you feel something rare, yourself. Not the version you show the world. Not the one you try to protect. But the one who's still becoming. And that kind of reflection, subtle, sacred, unsaid, is the beginning of real transformation. There's a weight in the room when someone truly aligned enters. Not a burden, not pressure, but a gravitational shift. It doesn't matter what they wear, how tall they stand, or how eloquently they speak. What you feel is something beneath the surface. Something still. Something resolved. That's the presence most people can't explain. They mistake it for confidence, or mystery, or maybe even arrogance. But what they're sensing is someone who doesn't flinch when silence falls. Someone who isn't performing. Someone who doesn't need to be liked because they've already made peace with being misunderstood. And that peace? That's what the ego of others quietly envies. We've grown so used to proving our worth through noise, through explaining, correcting, justifying. But presence doesn't need defense. It doesn't rise to bait. It doesn't flinch at provocation. When you're rooted in your truth, when you've met your own fears and walked through your own darkness, the external world loses its grip on your emotions. You become a mountain. Still. Unshaken. Observing, not reacting. And people around you feel it. Some will be drawn in, searching for refuge in your calm. Others will feel threatened, uncomfortable with what they can't manipulate or predict. But all will remember you. Not because you tried, but because you didn't. There's a sacred rebellion in choosing silence over reaction. In not explaining your value. In not clarifying your intentions. Because the truth is, the moment you start explaining your soul to someone who has already made up their mind about you, you've already lost your peace. Silence, when rooted in clarity, becomes a boundary. It says, I know who I am. I don't need to correct your perception. And that unnerves people. Because we live in a world where attention is currency. But presence? Presence is wealth. It's legacy. It's the echo that lingers long after you've left the room. Think about the people who shaped you. Who truly altered the course of your thinking. Were they loud? Were they always speaking? Or were they so deeply themselves that being near them felt like a form of instruction? Maybe they didn't give advice. Maybe they didn't even talk much. But something about how they carried themselves taught you more than any speech ever could. That's the essence of what Zen Awakening is all about, returning to the truth of who you are, without needing to perform, persuade, or please. This kind of presence is earned, not gifted. It's the result of choices made in solitude. It's born in the moments when no one's watching, when you decide to stay instead of run, to feel instead of numb, to wait instead of chase. It's forged in the quiet choices that seem insignificant, but shape everything, choosing honesty when lies would be easier, choosing rest when hustle screams louder, choosing self-respect when validation beckons. Presence is not an event. It's a result. A symptom of inner integration. And perhaps the most powerful thing about it? It reminds others that this kind of life is possible. Not perfect, not without pain, but anchored, whole, quiet, and clear. When you show up fully in yourself, you give others permission to put down their armor too. Not because you tell them to, but because your existence whispers, there is another way. You can be at peace without explanation. You can be powerful without shouting. And that whisper? It changes lives. But don't mistake this quiet power for passivity. It's not avoidance. It's not silence out of fear. It's the opposite. It's restraint born of understanding. It's choosing not to waste words where presence says enough. It's knowing the difference between reaction and response, and choosing the latter because your energy is too sacred to be spent carelessly. This isn't about being indifferent. It's about being selective. Not everyone deserves access to your peace. Not every situation deserves your commentary. Not every wound requires reopening. And when you live from that awareness, you become untouchable, not in ego, but in essence. Of course, some will misunderstand you. They'll call you cold, arrogant, distant. That's the cost of living rooted in your center in a world that rewards chaos. But the deeper truth is, those who are meant for you, those who recognize the language of peace, will find you. They'll be drawn not to what you say, but to what you emanate. Not to your image, but to your essence. And those are the connections that last. The ones not built on noise, but on resonance. So, the next time you feel the urge to explain yourself, to prove your worth, to respond to every misunderstanding, pause. Breathe. Remember who you are. Remember that not every battle is yours to fight. Some are invitations to return to your stillness. To remember that your power is not in being understood by everyone, but in being fully at home within yourself. And from that place, you move differently. You speak with intention. You walk with alignment. You become the mirror that shows others their own noise, not to shame them, but to awaken them. Because the ones who carry real presence don't need applause to know their value. They don't need agreement to know their truth. They've already looked in the mirror of solitude and made peace with the reflection. And from that peace, they build lives that echo, even in silence. There comes a point in every person's life where they stop trying to convince the world of who they are and start simply being. No more performance. No more explaining. Just presence. And that shift? It's subtle on the outside but revolutionary on the inside. Because the truth is, the moment you stop needing others to understand you is the moment you become truly free. Free from the weight of perception. Free from the hunger for approval. Free from the emotional roller coaster of trying to match everyone's expectations. You realize then that peace isn't found in how others see you, it's in how deeply you've come to know yourself. This kind of inner knowing is hard-earned. It doesn't come from books or affirmations or following trends. It comes from sitting in the dark with your own thoughts and refusing to run. It comes from asking hard questions, who am? It comes from sitting in the dark with your own thoughts and refusing to run. It comes from asking hard questions, who am I when I'm not being useful? Who am I when no one's clapping? Who am I when I'm not needed, and answering them with honesty, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. That's where the roots of your presence take hold. Deep, unshakable roots that no storm can uproot. And from there, you grow, not upward in pursuit of validation, but downward in pursuit of truth. There is something magnetic about a person who has done their inner work. Not because they're perfect, but because they're whole. Because they've looked into the mirror and faced their own flaws, their shadows, their pain, and instead of running, they stayed. They listened. They learned. And now they move differently. With grace, with quiet strength, with a groundedness that can't be faked. This isn't about ego. It's about essence. And it shows up in everything, from how they speak to how they pause, from how they say no to how they hold space for others without losing themselves. You begin to realize that presence isn't about impressing people, it's about impressing upon them the stillness you've cultivated within. You become a mirror, not of their desires, but of their unrest. And for some, that's uncomfortable. Your calm will expose their chaos. Your boundaries will feel like rejection. Your silence will feel like distance. But that's not yours to fix. That's theirs to face. Because once you've tasted the serenity of self-awareness, you stop watering dead gardens. You stop negotiating with people who only understand loudness. And instead, you begin living in alignment with your truth, even if it costs you approval. You begin to anchor yourself in things that truly matter. Silence becomes sacred. Nature becomes your teacher. Solitude becomes your mirror. And in that sacred space, you rediscover the beauty of being alive. Not in the grand moments, but in the simple ones. The way sunlight spills through your window. The taste of tea when you're fully present. The softness in your breath when you're not chasing, proving, or explaining. That's where life is. And you start to realize you've been missing it, all because you were trapped in mental loops about things that no longer deserve your energy. There is deep magic in reclaiming your now. It doesn't mean you forget your past. It means you honor it by no longer letting it define you. You gather the wisdom. You keep the lessons. But you walk forward, not with bitterness, but with reverence. Because you are still here. And being here, truly here, is the most radical act of healing you can offer yourself. So, as you continue walking this path, remember, real power is not about being untouchable. It's about being fully human, soft, yet strong. Open, yet discerning. Present, yet unshakable. And when you live from that place, you don't chase anything. You attract everything that aligns. Not because you demand it, but because you embody it. That is the silent revolution of your presence. That is what Zen Awakening truly means. There comes a moment, quiet, yet thunderous, when you realize you no longer think about them the way you used to. Not because the memories have vanished or the past has changed, but because you have changed. Your heart no longer flinches when their name crosses your thoughts. Your soul no longer waits at the doorway of the past, hoping they'll return to offer the closure you once begged for. No, now you stand in your present, tall, grounded, alive, and that's how you know the healing is real. Because healing doesn't scream. It whispers. It flows in the little things, the calm in your chest when you wake up. And with that healing comes a profound awareness that not every connection was meant to last, but every connection was meant to teach. Some people were mirrors, reflecting the parts of you that needed light. Others were storms, shaking you from complacency. And a few were brief flames that warmed your heart, only to fade into smoke. You no longer cling to what could have been. You bow to what was, bless it, and let it pass. Because now you understand, love that costs you your peace is too expensive. And love that leaves when you needed it most wasn't love, it was a lesson. You begin to treat your own heart with the tenderness you once reserved for others. You become your own safe space. You learn to rest in your own arms. To hold your emotions without judgment. To be fully present with your own pain, joy, doubt, and hope. And in doing so, you become whole, not because someone filled your gaps, but because you finally stopped running from them. You finally said, I see you, to the hurting parts. I love you, to the forgotten ones. I'm here, to the pieces that once screamed in silence. This is the moment your soul exhaled. The moment you stopped waiting for them to come back and realized you had already come back to yourself. The power you sought in their presence now radiates from your own being. The clarity you once begged them to provide now blossoms from your own stillness. The closure you chased like a shadow has quietly unfolded in the arms of self-understanding. You no longer seek to be chosen. You choose yourself. And in that choice, everything shifts. Now, your energy is not desperate. It's discerning. You don't beg to be loved. You attract what is aligned. You don't try to prove your worth. You embody it. And in this new vibration, life responds differently. You find yourself drawn to people who feel like peace, not confusion. Conversations that spark your mind, not drain your soul. Moments that expand you, not shrink you. So, when they enter your thoughts again, as they sometimes will, you don't panic. You don't spiral. You simply smile, acknowledge the memory, and return to your breath. Because they no longer hold power over your peace. They are no longer the center of your universe. You've taken that role back. And now, with quiet confidence, you walk forward, not in bitterness, but in reverence for everything you've survived. You wear your scars not as shame, but as proof that you are still here, still growing, still becoming. This is the end of that chapter. Not because it was bad, but because you are ready for more. More life. More truth. More of you. The past did what it came to do. It shaped you, cracked you open, and invited you to rise. Now, the invitation is yours. To step fully into the present. To meet yourself with love. To move forward with power. You are not broken. You are becoming. And this stillness, this clarity, this quiet joy, that's what real healing feels like. This is your story now. One where you no longer wait to be saved, but instead become your own sanctuary. One where peace is not found in someone's arms, but in your own presence. One where love begins not with their return, but with your awakening. This is Zen Awakening. And your journey has only just begun.